Hey, Bernt. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Is this the first time at the founder stage?
It is.
Fantastic.
First time at Slush. It's a beautiful event. It's been really fun.
And I'm excited to be here with you because I'm only 10 weeks in with EQT. And for me, your company is the one that have created most interest and inbounds to me. People who want to get access to you, they want interest to you, they want to know when your robotics are on the market. And today I think we will deep dive into what is it that creates such an interest with you and your company.
Awesome.
But we're going to start off with some facts about 1X Robotics. So it's founded by you in 2014 in Norway. In 2020, you launched your first generation robotic, right?
Yes,
Eve.
the first humanoid Eve.
The first humanoid Eve. We're going to speak more about Eve. I think we...
Yeah, so this is Neo that you're seeing behind
Neo,
here.
exactly.
Second
Let's
generation
not
technology.
be confused with that. Yeah. In 2019, you established a dual headquarter in San Francisco. So you have 2 offices now. In 23, OpenAI Startup Fund led your A round. And in 24, EQT, who I represent today, we invested in your B round. And in August 24, you had your unveil of Neo, which I know it's a great milestone for you. So we're going to spend some time talking about that later. And you're 177 people today, so you're not a startup, but on the boundary to become a real scale-up. So we're going to go through your scale-up journey. And you have prototype factoring in Norway. Did I get all of that right?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So when I started to learn about this, I had to do some research about this. And when I learned that Bernt, who's actually Bernt, he's from Norway, it struck me that, I mean, I didn't see Norway as a deep tech country, or maybe that's just because I'm Swedish and we look different on Norway. But I'm curious, what was it in your youth or your bringing up that created such an interest that led to you starting and creating this company, 1X Robotics?
I don't know if it's like Norway specific, but I mean, as a kid, I loved like tinkering, taking things apart, building it again, like building electromechanical systems, things that move, and really combine that with an interest in gaming and game engine design, and like writing a lot of code. And at some point, just kind of like connected the dots, right, of how incredibly engaging it is when you write some code and you see something move. Not just draw something on the screen, something actually moves. And that's always like tickled my brain in the right kind of manner. And for some strange reason, I got into this very early, like as I was a kid. Like,
wow.
I want to create humanoid robotics. That's all I'm going to do. It's like my lifelong passion. I knew it from the beginning. I was supposed to go to Japan and study robotics in Japan because, Honda Asimo and like Japan was so early on this, and they had some incredibly beautiful machines, like 25 years ahead of their time. And then they kind of fell behind a bit. And I never ended up going to Japan, or I ended up going to Japan, but not for school. But yeah, I'm incredibly lucky, right? I get to do what I've always wanted to do. And I think we don't appreciate enough how lucky we are to be alive right now.
Yeah.
Because humanity is going through this incredible shift where we can free kind of like humanity from the effort needed to create products and services, both in the digital realm with AI and also in the physical now with humanoids and general systems. And yeah, what a time to be alive.
But also before, when we had our catch-up, we talked about, I mean, was it something in particular in your environment that you wanted to find a solution for, or was it more like a technical challenge for you? Because we talked about your first job, or one of your first jobs.
Yeah. So I think it's both, right? Because like as a science nerd, there's nothing in the world you can work with that's as fun as humanoid robotics, because you get to do everything from electromechanics and physics all the way up to AI, and everything in one product, manufacturing, everything. But I had this, when I just started university, I had like a side gig job just to make ends meet, and I was cleaning for elderly people. And it was actually really sad, because it struck me how many of the people I came to that had already cleaned. even though they were pretty old, so like they really struggled to do this. But then they could spend that 20 minutes where I was supposed to be there to just sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk to someone. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? When we look at this aging demography we have now, the shrinking working age, and we see it very, very well in healthcare, where we aren't able to give people dignity as they age. But I mean, it's all across society. And in the next decade, or even just next few years, we need to have this incredible increase in productivity across society if we're going to be able to increase our standard of living, or at least keep it. And that's really the mission we're on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Eve and Neo. So I think we see it here, but this is Neo.
Yeah,
right?
so this is Neo Beta, which specifically, just to say that, like, this is the beta unit of Neo, and then the actual product that is going into homes in not so long, although I'm not allowed to tell you exactly when, but it's not that long. It's going to look slightly different, but it's based on the same technology and like, etc. Right? So there's like 3 generations. You have Eve, and then you have the Neo Beta, and then we have the actual Neo going into consumer.
Yeah, but also my understanding, and maybe I have done wrong research here, but one is for more industrial areas and one is more for home and elderly people, etc., right?
Yeah, or to some extent. So I mean, when we developed Eve, the first version, it's kind of a testing platform for everything that we've developed in-house, because we're fully vertically integrated. So we create everything from the motors and the tendon-like drives inspired by muscle that makes our robot move the way they move. All of this technology got matured and tested out in Eve. We produced almost 100 of them. We deployed them in a lot of different applications, including the home. I had one at home that was really fun. It's kind of like getting a third child. Wasn't fully working yet, but it could do some useful stuff, and it was really fun.
Unlike kids. I mean, they can't do, if you say it's like a third child.
It was less work to get the robot to pick something up than to get the kids to pick something up.
Okay.
So something's going right. But anyway, it's, I mean, that's the verification of all the technology that now is the second generation going into Neo. And that's 10 years of hardcore R&D going into that and manufacturing development. So glad we laid the foundations early enough to really hit the wave now when things are happening.
So talking about your R&D process and how you got from A to where you are now, you described that when you get started, you applied the first principle approach that helped you to, you know, gave you a mindset to overcome problems. And we have also seen many robotic companies that actually fail because they're over-engineering. How did you do it when you got started, and how have you applied it during your R&D process?
So we talked a bit about Honda Asimo, right? And the early work from Humanoids from Honda. And it's just a good example of not first principle thinking. So when I started the company, I really sat down and like, why did all of these systems fail? And to me, it really comes down to 2 things. It's, if you're going to do this, your system has to be very cost effective. It only makes sense at scale. Like, it's a general autonomous of work. You can do anything. It's kind of like a computer, right? In that computers are super good at anything. And if you bring up your laptop to write some document in Word, man, is that a complicated device to write something. Like, that makes no sense. But it's still the cheapest device to write something on, because it's got such a scale. So it's cheap, it's high quality, there's an ecosystem. Humanoids are the same. And that means it has to be cost effective. So start from day one, cost effective. What does that mean? Well, if it weighs 30 kilograms and all of your competitors' robots weigh 90, that's 1/3 of the raw materials. It's clearly going to be cheaper, right? How do you reduce part count? And the entire rationale for why we did our own type of drive technology with like motors and tendons, more like muscles, is that nothing moves fast then. In the human body, almost nothing moves fast. And this means that you don't have to be accurate. Right? So like now your parts don't need to be special alloys, don't need to be super accurate in machining or tolerances when assembling. And like you can, like, from a first principles approach, do so much to reduce cost. And these things that you do day one, and then you spend 10 years refining this technology, if you picked the wrong direction, you got to start over.
Yeah.
So like these, like, make sure that your business makes sense from day one. and make sure that once you actually succeed, it's one hell of like a unit economics thing.
Yeah.
And it's just going to really take off. So yeah, planning back from success, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then thinking first principles.
Did you find the right path directly, or have you sort of moved forward and had to go back and do it again?
On the technology, we found the right path directly.
Yeah.
But we were told repeatedly for 7 years, the first 7 years, that it was the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And the only reason it worked out was because we didn't give up.
Yeah.
And it's just grinding and grit, right? And I think one of the most important advices I can give to other founders and startups is the power of having conviction on something and not giving up. That's a startup, right? You can't make multiple bets. That's what the big ones do. You make one bet with super high conviction, and either it works or you're dead. And I think most startups die because you gave up on your conviction and you watered out what you originally tried to do.
Yeah.
So you got to just like stay with it.
Yeah.
For us, for example, the tandem drives, it's very hard to get them to last long. That's like a classical like problem with these kind of drives. We spent 7 years with hardcore research and development figuring out how to make the fibers last way longer than like any geared system.
Wow.
And
that's paying off now.
That's paying off now, right?
Yeah.
So, but it didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of time.
But I'm thinking about one more thing about Neo before we're going into your scale-up journey. I mean, to have one of those robotics in your house, I am a very safety-oriented person. You know, is there anything I need to think about before I get one of those to be in my house with my kids, I know you have kids and cats as well, and you have them in your house.
Yes, I think first of all, we've done like everything we can from a first principles again approach from day one on how do you make it safe.
Yeah.
So without going too deep on this, usually when a robot moves, there's an enormous amount of energy in it. And it's just like when a robot arm moves, inside there's a motor and a gear.
Yeah.
And like say it's 100 to 1 gear, that means the motor is spinning 100 times faster than your arm is moving. And now there's a squared relationship between energy and velocity. We all learned this in school, right? A car that goes twice as fast is 4 times as dangerous. This is also true here, and this is why industrial robots are in cages and why they're incredibly dangerous, even though they're not necessarily strong. That's why we didn't build the robots like that, right? We build them like humans, and if we run into each other around the corner because we were really hurrying to get up on stage here, that's kind of painful, might be a bit awkward, but we're not afraid of dying. And the same should be true for robots. So we've made the robot pretty safe in itself, very lightweight, compliant, soft, all these things. Now, that being said, there's a lot of issues with safety that we're still working on with respect to how do we ensure the robot doesn't ever do anything that could be harmful. Like the robot is safe, but it's not safe if it has like, I don't know, a very hot cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
And then it's the cybersecurity and all these things. But luckily, these things aren't new. There's like, whether you're making autonomous cars or you're making like a lot of different products, these things are really well established, and there's well established standards on how to secure and make sure that this is safe. So we're going to make sure you're safe with your robot, and also that it's not something you would ever live it out, right? Okay. It's a very sticky product. Once you don't have to do stuff at home anymore,
no,
it's very hard to go back. It's a very sticky product.
Oh, I can just imagine. Fantastic. Going over to your scale-up journey. So scaling up hardware and deep tech, it's hard. It's a challenge for almost all companies, but I can imagine with the sort of new deep tech that you are in, it's difficult. You are growing your team now. You're 177. You're growing 10 to 20 people per month, right? How has your team, how have you been thinking about your team since you were this agile R&D company until where you are now? Have you shifted in focus in the management team, for example? Have you changed anyone that was a really core player when you were a very small company that sort of needed new capabilities or new core functions in your executive team, for example?
Yeah, sure. So just like first taking a step back and just saying, for us, all it's about is make cost-effective humanoids that are safe so we can deploy them first into consumer.
Yeah.
Get all the data needed for intelligence, because intelligence comes from the diversity of all the different tasks that we do every day in completely different scenes and settings every day, because our world is always changing. This doesn't happen in a factory. And then use that to create an abundance of labor. That's our mission, right? We want to create an abundance of labor through safe, intelligent humanoids. And I think having an extremely clear mission is such a gift. So we have to use it. Most companies struggle with this. We don't. We know exactly what to do. Like as an employee, you wake up and you're like, am I contributing towards this today or am I not? And this gives you the ability to have a super high agency if you hire the right people. Because you don't need to tell them what to do. We all, like you don't need to have all these alignment meetings. Everyone knows what we need to do. And how are you contributing, and go do it. And this of course does not work necessarily in manufacturing, which is way more operational. But it does work with management in this, right? And I don't think there's any free lunch here. As you become a manufacturing company, you will be forced towards more process. But I like to look at process as a necessary evil. You have to minimize it or everything slows down, and you have to try to contain it. So like you have process in your manufacturing, but you try to not let that process mindset leak into your R&D, even though those departments need to work very tightly together. And I think like that interface is what's hard, right? And that's what most people struggle with. And I think we're doing a pretty good job on it. Other shout outs, like if you want to study someone who does this really well, I would say Tesla traditionally has been incredibly good at this, operating as an agile software company and AI company and still doing large scale manufacturing. So that world is kind of changing. And lean on good tools. You don't need as much process as you used to because you have way better tools. But yeah.
And some companies that I have seen also moving from where you are now, you are sort of like coming from this underdog position where you are just prospect and dreams and potential, and all of a sudden you have to start to actually deliver. You have investors, you have customers, you have partnerships, potential, lenders, and some companies seem, they almost lose a little bit of their identity when they grow up, and they look back at the time when we were only this team. How have you been able to keep that growing from 10 people to 170, and now you're becoming 400 or so next year? How do you do that? It's a tricky question.
It's very hard and it's very painful.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like any way to do it without suffering a lot. Yeah. So I think at this point 3 times we kind of reinvented the company and said like, okay, our culture is not going where we want it to go. This is not who we are. We need to remove a few people who are driving culture in the wrong direction, and we need to start this over. And I think those decisions are incredibly important. Like as you scale and as your company matures, you have 2 very important roles as a founder when it comes to this strategy. Is one, you have to make the right technological bets, right? So the world is changing and you need to not get left behind. This happened to a lot of robotics companies the last 5 years because they didn't catch the end-to-end learning kind of like all in on big neural networks wave, and they're still stuck with like internal conflict. Very talented people that want to do classical controls and like classical robotics, and then you have the AI people over here and they're kind of competing camps and like everything's a mess. We didn't do that. We said like, this is what we're doing. The only thing that will get us fully there to something that's so intelligent that it can do anything is the learning approach. Yeah. And you're in or you're out. And then that's it, right? And the same comes to culture. Yeah. You have to you're in or you're out. Like here's the culture. And it's not for everyone, not at all. Like I think the most important thing I do, like up until we were 150 people roughly, I interviewed everyone. Yeah. And the great filter was basically just, this is like joining the World Cup, potentially winning team in the World Cup in soccer. And that means it's going to be a heck of a lot of work and a lot of fun. And you'll learn so much. But we're doing this to win. And if that's not for you, if you're not in a situation in life where that works for you, then this is not the place for you. It doesn't matter how good you are, because those are the expectations we set, and here's everything we give back that makes it worth it to you. But like brutally honest expectation management, and know who you are. Like, what is your culture? And to us, the culture is the mission, and how we're oriented on the mission, how it's only low ego, knowledge-based respect, and a very flat organization with minimum process. That's like who we are. That doesn't fit for most people. It fits for a subset of people that thrive in this like huge amount of agency and autonomy and work really hard.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You have been able to attract a lot of funding with some reputable names, and how you select your investors, it needs to be different discussions, but I'm also curious about that. But what do you think have been the big unlock for you to be able to raise so much money? And also going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things. You have the obvious things, like try to deliver on what you promise and show over time that if you get money, you actually do what you said you were going to do. That's pretty important. I think we've been very frugal. So we've raised about $150 million so far in total, and run a company for 10 years. Inventing everything from core technology in motors and electronics and sensors to manufacturing of all of these things and the AI. So I think we've been very capital efficient, and that really helps. Because there's always these waves, right? And you have like, oh, now capital is just flowing in because everyone is realizing that humanoids is going to happen, and you have to have a bet in this space because it's going to be so big. But it hasn't always been like that, and it mightn't necessarily be like that in 2 years. Maybe things took slightly longer. I don't think they will, but like maybe they do, right? You never know. And are you still around then, right? So that's be frugal. And then of course, it's meeting the right people. That's always it. I think for us, I owe a lot to Sam. We met like end of 2021, summer 2021. And spent a lot of time getting to know each other, and like, also, he's also a big believer in this, right? AI is going to get physical. And that's a big name to have on your cap table, right? OpenAI. That really helped. So
you are maybe also in the perfect storm right now. I mean, it's everyone is talking about this, so it might also help a little bit, but it's fantastic. So we are soon running out of time. I had, hundreds of unasked questions here that we didn't get into. So maybe we get the slot next year as well. But looking into the future, your roadmap going forward and this industry going forward, how big can this become?
So the way I look at it is, as a society, we are basically three things. We're harvesting energy, then we're turning that into products and services, and then we consume them. And we're so good at harvesting energy. And if you asked someone from like 1890 or something and just said like, oh, in 2024, you can buy like a kilowatt of power for 10 cents, they would never believe you. It's just unfathomable, the amount of power that is. Now, I think if you look back at this in like a few years, people will say the same about physical labor. It's like, yeah, why can't you have anything you want? Because physical labor, that's like zero overhead. There's no human effort involved. You take energy, you apply autonomy, and you get products and services. That's the way the world works. But of course, to us now, that's not the way the world works at all. And neither was it for energy before we really mastered how to harvest energy. And I'm not saying we're done yet on the energy front, but we're pretty good at it. And that means it's hard to define, right? What is the impact? I think we're going to go to a post-scarcity type economy. We're not going to any longer be constrained by labor. And you can think about it a bit like if you could prompt engineer physical reality to do anything, right? So we're starting to get used to being able to type a few words, and I can study a new field by dragging in and searching a lot of like the best articles, everything, understand, like basically have someone write a PhD for me in a few minutes. You can do the same in the physical world. Whether it's cleaning your house or manufacturing cars or making a beautiful garden, right? And I think that's gonna redefine human nature in the same manner that we did with like the printing press or the car or agriculture or similar technologies. And
in the middle of this is you and One Extra Robotics. That's
I started with that, right? I'm so lucky to be born exactly now.
But you were just a kid when you found out about this.
And if I was born 10 years earlier, I would probably be exactly the same, and I would just be wrong. And I would have wasted all the money and nothing would have worked.
Yes. Well, we're out of time. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Bernt.
Oh, thank you. It's really fun.